Left 4 Dead 2 is a perfect sequel to a perfect game, but is that a good thing? As much as I like what Left 4 Dead 2 has become, it's hard to deny the fact that there's really no reason to go back to play Left 4 Dead 1 at this point. This isn't because the new special infected are so great that you can't live without them, or that the absence of melee weapons, the many added guns, and even alternative equipment options makes the old gameplay feel hollow or something. No, none of that new stuff even matters to this discussion. Something I didn't realize before, which some commenters made me aware of and I've now seen for myself, you can literally play Left 4 Dead 1 inside of Left 4 Dead 2. The characters, sound design, and maps, of course, but even the smaller roster of special infected, and the old weapon and equipment choices. The only major differences between the mutation and the original game, at least that I could spot, involve the updates Valve made to the physics, visual effects, and programming for the sequel. Because it's running on the Left 4 Dead 2 machine, the retro gameplay of the Left 4 Dead 1 mutation gets the benefit of pipe bombs actually causing a ragdoll zombie corpse explosion, something Valve said they couldn't do in the first game and had to just add a red mist effect instead, and the added detail of your attacks physically affecting the zombies, such as chunks of them getting shot off with shotgun blasts and their guts pouring out sometimes, and so on. In addition to both of those, because Valve altered how they spawn in items and weapons, making them an interchangeable thing, it seems that guns can appear in more locations in the mutation than in the first game. I'm almost positive this is the case anyway. No Mercy Subway always had all three in the same few spots, but in the mutation you'll find a couple strewn around here and there. Besides all that, I mean, the UI is different, the dead air metal detector panic event isn't optional, and the shotguns behave slightly differently in relation to the reloading animation, but that's about it. So, with all that being the case, sure, there are still some differences, but most of these are minor, arguable improvements that don't really make that big of an impact. The only changes I'd consider to be significant are the weapon spawning changes and the metal detector Crescendo event. I'd say the point remains mostly unchanged, unless you're specifically wanting to hang out with the player pool that stuck with the first game, or are achievement hunting, owning Left 4 Dead 2 and only Left 4 Dead 2 is the way to go from here on out. Initially I wrote quite a few paragraphs here, which I've now cut from the video, about how this made me sad, since I like when games have their own identity, how plenty of sequels, even the most iterative ones, usually left reason to return to the original game, from single-player titles like God of War and Uncharted, to even multiplayer-focused series like Halo and Gears of War, given their story mode campaigns. I then went on to talk about how much 14 years can do for a game's image in the mind of consumers, as, on release, even among fans of the first game, people were very hesitant on Valve releasing a full-priced sequel in such short order, yet now everyone loves how cheap this game is, $10 full price or $2 on sale every other month, and comes with a decade's worth of content updates and a near infinite supply of mods in the easy-to-access Steam Workshop. Now the game looks very consumer-friendly, whereas at launch, it wasn't. Afterwards, I threw out a few potential reasons on why they stopped at 2, some of them just for laughs, and others a bit more serious. However, when writing, and recording actually, annoyingly, this script, one of the lead designers of the original Left 4 Dead did an interview explaining the reasoning for Left 4 Dead 2's quick release. Essentially, the first game should have never been shipped out, it was a broken game. To quote Chet from the article, he says specifically, Left 4 Dead was such a broken thing that nobody wanted to touch it. That game iterated so quickly that if it meant breaking something horrible, where you had to load a map 2 or 3 times but you could playtest it today, we did it. That meant at some point you had to pay for that debt. There was no way you were going to support mods for Left 4 Dead in the same way we did for Left 4 Dead 2 without a big reset. When asked why this wasn't communicated clearly with the consumers, he basically explains that he'd rather people be upset with him, making the decision to launch a sequel so soon, opposed to throwing everyone who worked tirelessly to get the game out the door in the first place under the bus in the public eye. He also says the director actually gave no fucks about the players, it was a random number generator, hilariously enough. Amazing. Anyway, with that being said, it makes a lot of sense to essentially redo the game, but with a properly functioning engine, one that can support mods like Valve obviously likes doing, but also making it easier to simply make more content for the game as a whole. However, there's still something to be said about this game, Left 4 Dead 2, being the one that represents the series forever, since the coat of paint it received seems to be that of a middle sequel, yet it's what we're stuck with as the final entry. What I mean is, these characters are the ones you'll see and play as most often these days, and this game's sound design is what'll be heard. What was a fun little musical touch and a bit of variance, the New Orleans and Southern feel to the soundtrack and the new goofier characters respectively, are permanently what is Left 4 Dead in the minds of many, and that's at the very least a little unfortunate, as I, and at least a dozen others out there, preferred the atmosphere, vibe, characters, and so on of the first game much more than those of the second, and far more of the content centers around the latter opposed to the former. Perhaps this stark difference was due to them wanting this to seem even more like a full-fledged sequel, so as to get a real engine as their foundation moving forward while providing a new-ish experience for players. Either way, there's not much else to say on that front. Here's a paradox for you. Left 4 Dead 1 is a perfect game, and Left 4 Dead 2 is the perfect sequel for it, but the qualities that make it such a great sequel are the same ones that hold it back from, in my eyes, being a perfect game. In that first video, I went on about how efficient Left 4 Dead was, how everything had either multiple purposes, or was included to further encourage working as a team. Crouching, closets, ladders, gas cans, and on and on. When I say Left 4 Dead 1 is a perfect game, know that I don't mean it in the it scores a 10 out of 10 way, more so in the Tetris is literally flawless way. I certainly wouldn't put Left 4 Dead up there with my top 35 or so games of all time, but like I've yammered on and on about last time, I have a sort of respect, a reverence for it that's pointless to mask. Herein lies the conundrum. Where do you go from here? How do you make a sequel to something as cohesive as Left 4 Dead 1 without losing some of that cohesiveness? Well, you can't, really. Like many sequels that attempt to create something bigger and better with the same foundation, what we're left with is change a few things here and there, and add a lot of stuff. New special infected, new weapons, new weapons, new weapons, new maps, new game modes, new characters, new equipment choices, a couple gimmicks, and so on. That incredibly focused game that I praised to the moon and back isn't so incredibly focused anymore. Setting aside how much fun I personally have with some of these new toys, enemies, and mechanics, when taking a step back, yeah, Left 4 Dead 2 simply isn't as balanced and consistent as Left 4 Dead 1 was. The more you add to a game, the less purified that vision becomes. This is why it's sometimes easier to envision a less ambitious game on a smaller scale being more theoretically perfect than one that's more ambitious or bigger as a whole. It's always tempting to add new things, because new things are fun, right? But not only can it present balancing problems, it can harm the pacing and even undermine the main appeal to a game in the first place. With all that being said, if there was ever a game to add more and more stuffing into until the seams started to burst, it's Left 4 Dead. In that first video, I also talked about how much mileage the game overall got from the AI director, the fake personality behind the RNG, how I agreed with and understood the developers when they talked about not getting bored playing their game, thanks to the many ways in which a match could be modified slightly. It kept the game from getting repetitive and stale. One of the main things I complained about, one of the only things really, were the car alarm cars, a key reason being that they're always in the same place every time. I yearned for some variety on that front. Well, now that I've played Left 4 Dead 2 quite a lot now, I see that the new weapons and equipment, among many, many other things, don't just detract from the perfect balance, it doesn't just disrupt the efficiency found in Left 4 Dead 1, it also fosters that spark of excitement once more, that every time you play, something will be a bit different. Ignoring the quality of each individual new equipment option for now, while there are definitely times where you get overwhelmed by choice, there are others where you're scrounging, desperate for something good, having to deal with whatever the game throws at you, and that can create some really enjoyable and memorable playthroughs. This is one of those times where I can see it both ways. I can absolutely appreciate starting with the normal shotgun and submachine gun in Left 4 Dead 1, and advancing to the better 3 guns later on as a reward. The progression is satisfying. But the times in Left 4 Dead 2 where your ammo is about to run dry, or you're so DPS starved you take any tier 2 gun the game took pity on you to spawn in, even one you normally hated? This is one of my favorite feelings in games as a whole, toughing it out with the equipment you have, trying to survive with a less than ideal set of circumstances. I love it in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I love it in Death Stranding and Dying Light. When your options are limited, and you're forced to either think up a creative solution, or utilize what little you have to its fullest, it scratches that tactical part of my brain, even if I'm not necessarily required to be smart or strategic. There's something so addicting about making do with a random set of potentially discordant equipment options, and I suspect this is a big reason the roguelite genre is so popular. In Left 4 Dead 1, they basically let you take your pick out of everything in the game. Less good shotgun and machine gun versus more good shotgun and machine gun, and sometimes a hunting rifle. In Left 4 Dead 2, though, if you had the choice, every single time, of all the guns and equipment options, you likely know exactly what your loadout would look like. In many single-player games, developers sometimes have to save players from themselves, so they don't unknowingly optimize the fun out of a game, doing the easiest and most efficient thing, opposed to engaging with other mechanics and ways of playing. This is the same idea, getting the player out of the mindset of never trying anything new, or never picking things even slightly unfavorable for the situation. The point is, with all of this variety, sure, at its worst, it feels like you're Sideshow Bob, and the rakes are the never-ending supply of different weapons the game throws at you to, I don't know, try to appease the gamers who haven't seen their favorite yet. But on the other hand, when the variety goes along with the more conservative doling out of the weapons as you explore the level, it honestly provides a more tense and satisfying experience than the first game at times. The more I play, the more I'm realizing that the simple ammunition piles are a hindrance. If you found your favorite gun already and keep coming across ammo, of course you'll choose to keep your roll reliable instead of being forced to switch it up. When paired with early laser sights, ammo piles can be turned into a choice, as you might opt to stick with the less desirable option to keep the laser attachment, but on the whole, I think less ammo and more replacement guns make for a more exciting time. Finding the exact same gun you're using as a way to refill your ammo that way can be its own reward after all. It's weird since the Left 4 Dead 2 game designers feel the same way. In the developer commentary, they said verbatim that more guns and no ammo piles caused players to switch more often, but the finales should still have them. I agree, so it's odd that I still sometimes find them when just playing the game casually. The many ways in which Valve injected more variety into the game with the weapons, item spawn changes, mutations, campaign gimmicks, special infected and equipment options is the reason this is the perfect sequel. It adds on to the only half of the appeal of the first game that you could add on to. You can't make something better than perfect, sorry Curtis Axel, only carry it along, and because the original game's core gameplay and mechanics are still here, beefing up the replayability factor makes a lot of sense, even if it can backfire at times. I'm not going to go in depth with the primary guns in the game for the most part. Well, I adore the new silenced submachine gun, it sounds so silky smooth.
Reload.
But besides that, one of my favorite habitual slip-ups comes in the form of reloading too early. I'm sure we've all been there. We think we're in a calm spot and choose to reload when we really didn't need to, and shit, now I can't help out my teammate. Especially with the larger clip snipers, it really helps to steady your left index finger, resisting the urge to press the R key when you've only shot 3 bullets out of your 30 capacity gun. This also provides a unique strength to the shotguns, further adding reasons to pick one depending on the circumstances. Since you're adding in a shell one at a time, you aren't forced to sit through an entire animation before being able to shoot whatever available shells you have at the ready, meaning you can lend a hand in tight surprise situations. Something else I wanted to mention, as a more general praise for the game and its gunplay, is how satisfying it is to protect your teammates from zombies. Really, killing groups of zombies in any capacity feels great in these games, but I particularly love when someone gets puked on and you get to sort of outline their body, getting rid of the enemies hovering around their face. It scratches an itch akin to staying in the lines when coloring in a coloring book. This game is so much fun to play. One of the design decisions I respect the most from Valve with Left 4 Dead 2 was not stooping to the low of granting more inventory slots for each survivor. There's a few miscellaneous tools you can acquire that don't really conform to the categorization found previously. Adrenaline shots and defibrillators make enough sense to fit the temporary and permanent healing slots respectively, and the boomer bile is another throwable, so of course, but the different ammo types so easily could have found their way into an entirely new inventory space dedicated to them, but instead, at its best, it's a choice, offensive or defensive. Flaming and explosive rounds pack more of a punch and can deal with certain enemy encounters better, if you save them for the right moment anyway, but you might be sacrificing a medkit, an invaluable healing tool. That's quite the risk versus reward there, but like I said, only at its best. More often, I find myself switching to the fire rounds, placing them, grabbing a clip of incendiary ammo, then carrying on with my medkit like nothing happened. At its worst, it's simply a net positive, free extra damage, and an extra clip of ammo with nothing being meaningfully thought about or sacrificed. I'm not sure if I can really blame the designers on this. I think this either-or mechanic with offensive and defensive items will always come down to how the game spawns them in, and where the players are in terms of health and confidence. The explosive rounds aren't as universally beneficial as the fire rounds, but they have their uses. They can deal friendly fire damage to your allies, and yourself even, if used in tight spots, which makes them worse when used as a blanket ammo refill. The times where I've seen them come in handy the most, besides lighting up faraway groups of regular zombies, were with witches. I've tried it both on its own and in conjunction with the Bile Bomb, and it seems to stun her enough that she can't make an approach, so I'd say that's an edge case worth keeping in mind when you spot explosive rounds on certain maps. The fire ammo is a lot more straightforwardly helpful, especially for higher difficulties. Every single bullet will eventually kill a common infected, given that they ignite in flames, and because the enemy itself is what's on fire, not the ground, it doesn't deal damage to you or your friends. They're especially efficient when paired with guns that have a large clip, as not only are you getting a completely free ammunition cycle, every shot being a guaranteed kill on regular zombies means you can conserve your bullets even more. Lastly, yeah, they set things on fire, so they're obviously going to come in handy for tankier enemies like witches, special infected, and, well, tanks. The designers said the initial idea was to have an extra munitions item. Basically, you'd choose between carrying ammo for when you'd need it or a medkit. Playtesters didn't see the benefit from the additional regular ammo, and thus never chose it, so Valve made the ammo do a different thing instead. Probably for the best, but this could be why they still decided to add in ammo piles in a lot of the campaigns. The defibrillators are a good addition, if only for how certain mutations and game modes take advantage of them, such as Realism, where rescue closets don't work and witches can kill you instantly. In normal gameplay though, medkits seem to be the clear way to go. However, I have seen decent arguments online for defibs when playing versus mode, given how beneficial it is to get more people into the safe rooms. The adrenaline shots granting a boost in speed overall, in addition to letting you dash through clumps of infected without getting slowed down as much, and helping you complete tasks quicker to boot, like pour gasoline or help up your teammates, makes it a worthwhile choice depending on which chapter you're in or what circumstances you're facing. The way it changes the visuals and sound of the game after you've taken a dose puts it over the top for me, a very neat effect. Plus, the one-off use of proving that you're stronger than Mustachio in the Carnival campaign is just ridiculously silly in all the right ways. The Boomer Bile attracting a new horde of zombies instead of just the ones in the area already separated from the pipe bomb enough that even when tossing it in a corner it's distinct, but naturally its best quality is how you can use it against tanks, witches, or to simply get a wave of zombies to attack each other instead of you. It feels like a riskier pipe bomb, one that could help, or could hurt, depending on if the zombies don't get taken care of by the time the bile effect wears out. If you whiff a bile throw on a tank, for instance, those newly spawned zombies may turn their attention to you, making your situation even worse. Laser sights are a net positive for any shooter game on their own in my opinion, but here they're even more clever, as they visibly show where your allies are aiming, thus making it easier to avoid getting hit by friendly fire. That, coupled with their rarity and lack of obsolescence, makes them one of the better rewards to stumble upon. Like I mentioned earlier, you may have to make the choice of abandoning a gun with the laser sight attached for something with more ammo in a pinch, or for something you feel is outright better, but on the whole, they're not as disposable as other equipment. I'm perfectly content with not seeing any laser sights on a playthrough, but it is pretty remarkable how well they slide into this game's already existing framework, being a clear advantage given that you can see where your teammates are about to shoot. They're so perfect, actually, that if these were a mechanic in the first game, I would have included them in my long list of reasons why Left 4 Dead is efficient and tightly designed. And to prove my point, look at that, the developer commentary confirms that they were planned for the first game, and everything I said about them were benefits they saw as well. Speaking of disposability, the chainsaw, M60, and grenade launchers are decent additions, being that they're obviously way more powerful than their contemporaries, but don't get the benefit of reloading with ammo piles. There's a degree of risk when grabbing them. They're tailor-made for certain overwhelming situations, but when their low life expectancy is inevitably used up, you're practically down a weapon slot, so maybe you'll think twice about grabbing one if your other gun isn't very versatile. The chainsaws and grenade launchers show up a lot more often than I'd like, though. The game kinda throws them at you at times, which kinda ruins their allure to some extent. I really like using the chainsaw, and love that it can basically instantly take care of a witch. Well, sometimes anyway.
Oh, there's the witch!
It didn't work, help! But finding yet another one before I'm even finished with the one I have is nuts. I'd also hazard a guess that these three weapons don't align with the new item/weapon spawn randomness, since they're usually in the same spots. The melee weapons are interesting, as they all deal the same damage per hit, but their swing speed and how many times the game checks if you've hit something per swing will determine how good they feel to use. If you've ever grown attached to the fire axe, it being able to chop into a group of zombies as you rotate your camera is likely the reason. There's also the blunt versus sharp choice, since zombies killed with a blade will instantly fall over essentially, so it can help when on the run, and you can slice off a smoker's tongue when timed right with a katana or something. It's rather impressive how, even though they're all similar in one regard, their swing orientations, speed, and sound effects make them all feel properly distinct. There's even multiple sounds per weapon if you check the game files. I still think they can make hordes a bit too mindless at times, but given how much more chaotic Crescendo events are as a whole this time around, specifically the Gauntlet types, I think it balances out in the long run. Plus, stopping to attack every zombie around you doesn't work as well with slower melee weapons. You'll usually take a hit or two at the very least, and best of all, camping in a corner can be completely undone by a spitter. It's pretty great how well the spitter works functionally, as they can both split up a slightly staggered group and deny an area for a brief time, such as a turret spot. Since we're already on the topic, the new special infected are, surprise surprise, very well crafted. The weakest of the three is probably the jockey. It certainly seems to be the one most people like the least, but even though he can be really ineffective at times and simply annoying during others, he can at least push and pull a survivor towards danger, which is a nice balance. Given that the smoker can pull and the charger can push, there being an in-betweener feels right. Veering off the side of a building with a survivor is always a joy, as is yoinking them behind the only bit of cover nearby, just out of the other player's line of sight. You take what you can get as a jockey. They mix well with the witches, I think, since they're so annoying and jerky you can't help but get the urge to fire at them, even when it might not be the smartest idea. I'd say the same theoretically goes for car alarms, but I personally haven't seen that strategy in action as of yet. I like how they form a tandem with regular zombie hordes. When they're the only thing coming at you, they're not too difficult to kill. They do have a bit more health than some of the other special infected, but even still, not that scary. However, their short king status means they can hide behind the taller common infected, resulting in many more surprise grabs than the alternative. It's also worth noting that they're the only special infected that you retain some control with, both as the zombie and as the survivor when they're latched on. Definitely sets them apart from the rest. The charger is very unique in that it's the only special infected whose grab can't be broken up by a shove. He needs to die if you want to save your friend. The idea that he gets stunned whenever he charges and misses is great, but when you're the special infected, it does feel like you're a victim to the level geometry a lot. Scraping the edge of a door frame or a pallet on the ground will all but assure your time as the charger was put to waste. Them being able to push players away is smart. I'm sure the designers were thinking of how many different ways they could split up a group, and they've already masterfully done pull with the smoker, the best special infected in the game in my opinion, and this is their attempt at the opposite. Even more, much like with the spitter, they do a good job of breaking a closely knit group of survivors. The spitter creates a no-no zone, and the charger can bowl into all of them, grabbing one and sending the rest flying. This makes narrow corridors a lot scarier, especially the ones that are placed near panic events, like the end of Chapter 4 in Dark Carnival. It seems like there's some behind-the-scenes work going on here, since the charger, the best special infected for this specific spot, sure does spawn a whole lot here to ruin your day. In fact, the alleyway in the parish is similar. A charger was at the end of it both times I played this with friends. Even though they're easy to avoid when out in the open, another big strength of theirs is ferrying away a survivor across the map. Smokers and jockeys pull their victim away at a reasonably slow speed, but chargers might knock you down and zoom on by until they hit something. But like I said, normally they're very, very easy to avoid, so they certainly aren't near the top of my list of worries when playing the game normally. This could be due in part to their phenomenal sound design. Their charging noise is fantastic, but it does give them away at times. You hear the incredible audio cue, and know to move in a straight line, either having eyesight on him and easily sidestepping out of the way, or you'll simply guess and get it right about half the time. That's certainly not a flaw. It's probably for the best that they have such a clear telegraph for their main attack, given how impactful and damaging it is. Speaking of the sound design, Valve continues to impress with their meticulously crafted enemies when it comes to the visual and audio department. Even with 3 more special infected added to the roster, you can still tell them apart based on their idle noises and their own designated spawn-in musical jingle. I do wonder how much more Valve could have stretched themselves, to be honest. This is a lot to get right, and they nailed it, so I'd just be curious how many unique enemies it would take for them to start showing ambiguity in their designs, both visual and audio. The spitter is the most interesting to me out of the 3 new types, the boomer of this trio. Neither the boomer nor the spitter can pin down a survivor with a grab attack of some kind, they rely on more indirect methods. Both shoot out something from their mouths, and while the boomer may cause the players to group up and protect the survivor who's being bum rushed, the spitter tries to divide the group when possible. The name itself puts every other spitter zombie in video games to shame. This is a spitter whose goal is to split. If I was the kind of channel to make bad jokes, I may have included something like spitter, more like splitter, am I right? But I'm not that kind of channel, and I shall not make that joke. Anyway, the name works on 2 levels, and that's clever. Eat that, Techland, and your stupidly named floater and drowner zombies. Even as a bot, she can show off her shrewdness by trapping 3 members of your group while a different special infected wails away on you. It's nice to see how well these new faces can work together. Much like the Boomer, she can also accelerate a bad situation, plastering spitter goo on a survivor who is already having a rough time, either currently being mauled by a different special infected, or is down and now unable to be helped without a massive chunk of damage dealt to the altruistic dummy. The fact that she, again, like the Boomer, deals one last final blow when defeated is smart. It can be taken advantage of when playing as the special infected, and as the survivor is always something to take into account. Even better, to cement her Boomer cousin status, her attacks also get their own sound design warning when you're being affected by it, reminiscent of the Boomer's bile puke song. I love how much my opinion of the Spitter's threat level changes depending on the environment. Out in the open? Literally no chance, they're pathetic. In a narrow enclosed space? Good lord, we may be fucked. I suppose she shares that intimidation volatility with the Charger. Both thrive in narrow areas and can split a team up, but when out in the open, aren't nearly as much of a hassle. I was originally going to comment on how the balance of the special infected is a bit out of whack. The Boomer has a very unique strength. He doesn't pin down survivors like 4 of the others do, he draws a horde of zombies to the group. Going from being a third of the special infected roster to a 6th means they obviously appear far less than before. However, when going back to play the first game a bit, I'm now realizing how impactful the Chargers and Spitters are, as it is rather quite simple to camp in a corner when in tight situations. The Spitter's acid dealing more and more damage the longer you're standing in it means you absolutely can't tank the damage, you have to move from that spot, and the Charger can ram and knock everyone down. As much as I was saying the opposite in the first video, I've come around. Don't get me wrong, I don't think less of the first game, I don't think it's a problem that turtling up is so effective. There's a simple and efficient charm in Left 4 Dead 1 that I don't think will ever get washed away, but I can also admit that for what Left 4 Dead 2 aims to do, keep players on the move and never let them get too comfortable, yeah, the Spitters and Chargers are kind of vital for balancing reasons, especially when factoring in the new melee weapons. The Boomer got a new female visual model, which is cool, but the other notable change with the zombie roster is the Wandering Witch. Initially, I didn't care much for these gals. Them walking around saps some of their scare factor, given that you can accidentally walk by them while barely cognizant of it at times. However, my opinion changed when I caught on to their strengths. First of all, they have their own soundscape. It's clear from a distance if the witch is stationary or not, and approaching them elicits a modified witch theme to boot.
Reloading.
Secondly, while, yeah, sometimes you might walk on by without trouble, or they could even walk into the fire on the map and kill themselves, funny enough. She walked in the fire on her own.
Reloading.
There are other times you might accidentally almost run right into them. They blend in surprisingly well, and because the heightened witch track doesn't start playing until you're almost on top of her, it's very possible to be unaware of her exact location and make a mistake. That's the third reason. Them walking around means, at a distance, they kinda look like a wandering zombie. You might shoot them intentionally and not realize your error until the sound design switches, or even better, you may shoot them without trying to. They not only get camouflaged with the surrounding environment if it's dark enough, groupings of zombies will mask her presence at times, leading to a potentially fatal shot. Fatal for you, not her, naturally. They can even walk into your pipe bomb throw if you weren't careful enough with your throw and didn't account for one being in the area still. Did you hit her?
Did I get her?
Did you kill her? No, you didn't! Get her, get her, get her, get her, get her! Their aggro range is way too small though, which makes them really easy to avoid or crown compared to the sitting variation. Plus, they won't even react right away once you enter their zone. But still, I think they're a nice addition. I think the Wandering Witches at their best just goes to show that I'm on the money about the car alarm thing. A slightly random potential hiccup can produce a fun, intense gameplay experience. Speaking of the car alarms, that was one of the improvements made to the AI director and variation allowance in the programming. Before, a car alarm car was always present in the exact same spot. It was an eternal constant. Now we can pick one of a few places to put the car alarm car. Even more, where in the first game, the pills, throwables, and guns occupied one of a few set spawn points, in Left 4 Dead 2, there's even more room for switch-ups. Basically, before, healing items like pills either would or wouldn't spawn in a few specific locations in the level. If the game didn't place them, it would be empty. There's no way tier 2 guns or something would ever find their way to that spot instead. This time they changed the code, allowing the game to place whichever type of item, throwable, healing, or weapon, in the majority of the potential spawning spaces, of which there are many more overall, it seems. There are definitely exceptions, such as certain areas in a specific chapter not allowing any primary gun to get picked, the M60, grenade launcher, and chainsaws having their own set locations, and I've even seen adrenaline shots get prioritized in the back of the truck during the Parish Bridge finale. More often, though, the change to the code is very noticeable. You'll find many weapons in spaces that otherwise might have only been used for pills and grenades if it were built like the first game. Because guns can now appear more often and in more spread out locations, it kind of ruins the call-out your survivors will do for weapons. Oh, you see a random tier 1 shotgun? A frying pan? Why not tell everyone about it?
Weapons over here.
Oh look guys, a fire axe, the 8th one we've seen in the last 2 minutes.
Weapons over here!
It gets on your nerves after a while, especially when going back and playing with the original survivors. It felt like Francis saying,
Weapons over here!
Was supposed to alert everyone in the party that tier 2 guns were found, or at the very least that weapons were scarce enough that missing out would be a problem.
Weapons here!
Now it's just constant.
Weapons over here! We got weapons over here! Weapons over here! Bunch of guns over here! We got weapons over here!
I'd also say that, again, at its worst, the randomness results in way too many weapons being thrown your way, including a potential crap load of tier 2 guns. Funny enough, this was a criticism I levied in the previous video without even realizing what the root cause was, the new spawning changes. The game works against itself sometimes, with its unrestricted randomness in most scenarios, but it's both a pro and a con, since it also has the capacity to make campaigns even more replayable. On that note, they also tried to let the game choose the level layout in a few specific chapters. The developer commentary pointed out the one in the Paris Cemetery section, where fences might show up to block more direct paths, but it doesn't seem like there are other big examples of that happening. They wanted to do a similar thing in the park in the same campaign, but playtesters found it too confusing, sadly. Dead Center has multiple ways the alarm in the mall has to be tripped, which is really neat, and I'm pretty sure the mall layout itself can change a bit, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It all kind of blurs together, even though I played it many times. The cars with alarms in them can be different, like I've mentioned, and then the weather effects in Hard Rain, both of which I wouldn't really count as the same thing as an ever-changing map layout. I certainly like the idea, but it's a shame there aren't more concrete instances of it happening in the campaigns. The more I learn of Left 4 Dead 2, the more I think a Left 4 Dead 3 could have been fucking awesome. Even with this one follow-up, they upgraded a lot of stuff relating to the director, and I suspect, if given another crack at it, they could have followed through with this dynamic map idea and went even further with the level of variety found in these campaigns. They already did a fantastic job when compared to the original game in that regard, and one of the key elements is the addition of even more unique enemies. There's what the designers call uncommon, common infected, whose threat level isn't on par to the special types by any means, but still have a strength that makes them a little trickier to deal with. All 5 are mostly exclusive to their respective campaigns, and also serve to sort of represent the length of time since the initial outbreak. The fireproof CETA zombies show the government's naive handling of the infection spread early on, and in the Atrium finale at the mall, the fireproof gimmick carries over to Jimmy Gibbs Jr., which is just plain funny. Basically, this limits Molotovs and fire bullets from being effective, but it's also the only place where fire is regularly a hazard in the opening chapter, so their placement makes a lot of sense. The fallen survivors, which are zombies that have items on them and run away from you, show up in the passing, hinting at the idea that there were survivors holding out on their own not too long ago. This isn't one of the base 5 campaigns, but even still. The clown zombies in the Dark Carnival don't say much about the lore specifically, but they are hilarious. They make squeaky noises when they walk, and can bring a small group of zombies rushing towards you. The Mudmen in Swamp Fever feel like something that couldn't have existed right off the bat. These are the product of enough time passing for the zombies to become one with their environment. They spring up from the water, obscuring your vision when they smack you, and have a creepy running animation. The construction worker infected, the ones with the earmuffs, don't get affected by pipe bombs. I'm not sure if this has a deeper meaning regarding the outbreak timeline, but it's a trait that's endearing at the very least. They'll keep coming after you even when a pipe bomb is beeping and attracting everyone else. Sadly, they're also immune to the boomer bile bombs, meaning Valve likely messed up and coded them to have a blanket resistance to all of the zombie luring throwables. Probably easier that way, but it is a bit unfortunate. Finally, the armored former soldiers, who are impervious from gunfire from the front. A melee shove into a shot to their vulnerable backside works effectively enough. These represent the last stages of government intervention, where they realized how severe this was and started to send the military. That's also the canonical reason the devs gave for some of the more militarized guns showing up in the sequel. The camouflage to the burst rifle was meant to show the US government turning their attention away from the war in the Middle East to the domestic threat back at home. I really like all of these uncommon infected types, especially the clown. Their squeaky noises are a delight, and they're a small part of why I adore the campaigns in Left 4 Dead 2. As much as I love the original Left 4 Dead levels, and appreciate what others in the community have created, every official campaign post Left 4 Dead 1 has been a special kind of great. The Sacrifice already had some fun quirks to it, with the tank and the train segment, and the finale had you turn on 3 separate generators, then go back from the safety of the bridge to sacrifice one person to save the others. I do think it's really short though, as is The Passing, the sequel to it, but if played back to back, they feel like a full-length campaign, so that's what I recommend. The Passing itself has its own share of flavor found within. There's the Fallen Survivor zombie, the lootable chests of supplies found in a few spots, the wedding venue with the Bride Witch, and at the end, you get the help of the original survivors as you fill up the generators with gas. Because it was released after the main game as extra, or DLC content, it is easy to spot the similarities between a few other campaigns though. The first chapter starts you off with only a melee option or pistols, and you're unlikely to find real guns for quite some time, much like a level I'll talk about soon, and there's a chance of seeing stormy weather, a hard rain staple. Kinda feels like a mashing of some ideas here, and the finale exemplifies that approach. It's quite literally the exact same map as The Sacrifice, but with the dead center finale gimmick of gathering gas cans. I don't think this is a bad set of levels by any means, but in terms of original content, it does feel a bit lacking. The storyline is also a bit questionable, not that it had to be amazing or anything, but the premise sticks out. In one sense, yeah, this slotting in the middle of Dead Center and Dark Carnival works well. We have the car and need to cross the bridge, sure. But the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors being here though? I get that this bridge is where we last saw Zoe, Lewis, and Francis, but what, these 3 are just going to live on this bridge forever? Oh, sorry, my bad, Lewis's leg is hurt, and Francis hates the military, right. Yeah, now it all makes sense. Also, why not have Zoe retell this interaction like Ellis does with his stories about Keith, sure. Dead Center is the real first campaign, and it kicks everything off with an incredible series of levels. Here's everything that's new or unique about it. The hotel setting, the fire and smoke effects, some of which force you to go a different way, like across the ledges on the outside of the building, and the fire can even burst through the doors that have smoke coming out of them, blocking another path. The CETA fireproof zombies are here, we have the distinct objective of bringing the cola to the gun shop owner, the mall setting is new, and has a few ways it can change like the door or the broken windows triggering the alarm, and the finale is the only one of the core 5 in the base game that has the objective of you collecting gas cans. It's essentially an upgraded version of the cola retrieval, and not only did it become its own game mode called Scavenge, it shows up in The Passing and a ton of other community campaigns since it's such a good climax. Besides being new or different, there's a few more specifics about Dead Center that are really cool. The hotel starts you off with either a melee weapon or pistols, and you have to make it all the way to the bottom of the elevator to finally be rewarded with a tier 1 primary gun, such as the SMG once the elevator opens up, or the pump shotgun in the side room. The visual for the area holds up to this day, the smoke dampening your vision, the fire all over, and the zombies rushing in and setting themselves ablaze. It's a great moment, the bottom of the hotel all the way to the safe room. The feeling of finally finding and grabbing that SMG, only to turn it on the now incoming zombies, is amazing, and it kinda makes me yearn for more of this idea. They definitely had to have special coded this level to not drop a weapon in the higher floors of the hotel, and it was well worth the trouble. The cola objective is very interesting, specifically because of the intentions behind it. In the developer commentary, they mentioned wanting to create an event that would force players to split up, but playtesters didn't like it, so this was their workaround. It was invisible encouragement to work in sets of 2. 2 grab the cola, and 2 use the high ground to cover the others. I gave that strategy a shot, on advanced even, and yeah, it works out really well. It was a cakewalk for the teammate who had the cola. Just overall a fantastic campaign. My only gripe is that it's 4 chapters instead of 5, because I want more of it. Dark Carnival features the clown zombies, has a lot of striking locales that fit the theme, such as the fairgrounds, potato sack big slide, bumper cars, tunnel of love, the maintenance tunnel of love, and so on. The motel before the carnival is also a great little area, providing a nice contrast to the very vertical hotel of the last campaign. In the fairground setting, along with it being fun to look at, with many peanut standees to smack,
I do not like that little peanut guy.
How can you not like Little Peanut?
There's even a few intact games to play here. I mentioned the test of strength, but you can do the shooting gallery game and unlock a gnome friend with enough points, And there's Whack-A-Mole, too. These inclusions are just plain fun. They go really well with the idea that 4 players will be exploring these levels, and 1 or 2 might get distracted playing a minigame while others fight off zombies. I know a certain guy named Dave who was pretty fed up with my Whack-A-Mole playing ways.
He's Dork's playing the fucking game again.
I didn't know.
Even when you aren't pissing your teammates off, the special infected are sure to take advantage of your tunnel vision, nabbing and riding you any chance they get. Wait. Sure, you could argue these are more on the sillier side of things, but I think one tongue-in-cheek campaign is fine, especially if we view them as their own standalone horror film. This particular horror movie happens to lean a little more into the campy vibe, and that's fun. There's even an external side goal found in this campaign of rescuing Gnome Chomsky. After you get enough points and reveal the Garden Gnome prize in Chapter 2, if you manage to bring him all the way to the rescue helicopter at the end, you'll get an achievement. What a riot. There's a panic event later on where you'll basically ride a roller coaster, and it's one of the harder panic events in the game, I will add. And the ending is in a concert venue. You'll have to start up a rock show to get the attention of the rescue chopper, and you can even utilize the fireworks and stage ballyhoo to light enemies on fire. Even in the finale, one that's reminiscent of the usual hold out until helicopter arrives stuff in the first game, there's a lot here to separate it from the rest. Swamp Fever has the Mudmen enemies and lots of swamp water that slows you down. But if I'm being totally honest, this is the least interesting campaign by a mile. It's confusing to navigate through, which could be a positive for it depending on your point of view, but I'm not a fan. The developer said the water flow is supposed to guide the player in the right direction, which I find pretty unintuitive, and when you're running away from endless zombies, it's not that easy to pop a squat and watch the very small subtleties in the water ripples. The panic events here are ridiculous and silly, which I'll get to later, and the finale is fine, actually. In fact, the ending chapter is probably my favorite, the big mansion to protect with the turret and zombies climbing all over. Yeah, not bad. Everything else? Not that pleasant. I wouldn't say it's a stinker, but it definitely feels more akin to the basic campaigns found in the first game. Because there are other, far better ones, this one being mid and slapped right in the middle isn't the end of the world. This leads me to Hard Rain, one of the best campaigns in all of Left 4 Dead. This is the only one where you'll retread the same environments again, as the story of the level is that you're here to pick up fuel for the boat, so half the campaign you go towards the gas station, and the other half you're on your way back, but you've already explored this area, and the game takes that into account, as the items you chose to loot remain gone on the return visit. What's more, every chapter the weather changes a little bit, the rain coming down harder and harder, until you've acquired the gas, and then the storm fully breaks out. Torrential downpours will start and stop at seemingly random intervals, blocking your vision and completely dominating the soundscape, preventing you from hearing when zombies or special infected are nearby, and it even gets so loud it can mask the tank music, causing it to be barely audible. The rain has also caused the areas to flood, so you'll have the choice of going slower through the water on ground level, or keep to the high elevation areas, the places you may have brushed off on the first trip through as unnecessary. My favorite quality to Hard Rain, however, is in the first half. You start seeing wandering witches now and then, and eventually you'll come across a couple in the same area. That's never happened before in any other campaign, so it's already kind of spooky, but then there's potential for a huge clump of them when in the sugar mill itself, and afterwards, when crossing the field of crops, there's a good 5 or so all walking around in here, hidden from sight. Zombies and special infected can charge in, making not hitting one a serious gamble, so much so it's an achievement to get to the safe room without triggering one all chapter, and it's not that common for players to have it. It's also easy to get lost if you don't stick to the pipe in the middle of the zone, both when making your way through the tail end of the Witch's Den, and also when on the return trip with the monsoon going nuts. Out of all the official campaigns in both Left 4 Dead games, this one stands out among the bunch, a truly unforgettable journey, but it being so distinct is actually a double-edged sword. In the developer commentary, they talked about their dynamic weather effects, and they made it sound like it was a thing the director could do whenever, except besides the first chapter of the passing, when it could happen sometimes and other times not, you'll only see the dynamic weather when it comes to the storms in the second half of the Hard Rain campaign. It absolutely gives it its own feel, along with retreading the same areas once more, which have less loot depending on what you grabbed the first time through, the Wandering Witch's Nest, and encouraging that you take a slightly different, higher elevation route because of all the flooding. But because all of these tricks are so great, all of them being jam-packed into a single campaign, it feels like they're being underutilized. I was going to say that this is the opposite of Left 4 Dead 1, since it isn't efficient at all, these ideas only being used for a single series of levels, However, the more I think about it, maybe this is similar to the opening of Dead Center. A touch of handcraftedness does wonders when surrounded by the director's randomness. Finally, there's the Parish, and it's a mix of extremely high highs and mundanely average lows. The Mardi Gras theme and city streets aren't really my cup of tea. It's easy to get turned around in a few spots, specifically the road that you're meant to go down, all the way into this door near the turned over bus. I really don't think the level design conveys that this is the right way to go. It doesn't help that the lighting can't be a signal, since everything is dull and bright. I really hate the lighting in this campaign. It was wild to hear that this was the first few levels they began creating for Left 4 Dead 2, with the interiors of the restaurants and such. Geez, kinda underwhelming for most of it. Thankfully, there's a few gimmicks that completely make up for it. The car alarm nest, where you enter a surprisingly dark sewer and pop your head out and see a mountain of alarmed cars, is amazing. Getting through this without triggering anything is surprisingly tough with multiple people, especially considering that simply climbing on top of a car sets it off.
Oh shit! Oh shit! If you go on top of it, oh shit!
Yeah, if you step on it.
Wow. Alright, looks like you hit the alarms. However, all these zombies are just climbing out of the fucking ladder, so it's like easy pickings. This is ridiculous. All the zombies came from this direction, which made it incredibly easy. I think I'm gonna have to put a thing in the video about how ridiculous it is when zombies climb up and down ladders, because it's just like, it's just so stupid. The armored zombies are a fine uncommon infected. I like the Gauntlet Crescendo event where you'll need to run around the fences to turn off the alarm, and there's even an event that doesn't feature the new way of running to turn something off, moving the parade float and waiting for it to become a platform. The graveyard having potentially different open pathways for each playthrough is awesome, but like I said, it would have been nice for that to show up in more maps than just this, essentially. The finale, where you'll need to run across the bridge, is incredibly intense. I think this starts to veer into a problem I'll talk about soon when it comes to the difficulty of the game as a whole, but ignoring that for now, going up and down the double-decker bridge, fighting off waves of zombies, and taking on a tank or two feels great. All 5 of the base campaigns, while mostly lacking in that horror atmosphere the first games had, feature so many unique qualities. I'm sure there are other videos out there ranking them in a tier list or going through them more in depth, but I just love how they all feel really separate from each other while keeping that same loose but connected narrative, trying to get to New Orleans for evac, starting at the mall, driving the car until they couldn't, taking the helicopter until the pilot became a zombie, riding on the boat until they needed fuel, then hopping aboard again until they got to the final evac zone. Something else that's a huge plus is that, yes, all of these gimmicks and tricks make each individual campaign stand out, but they also add to the pool of shared resources for the community to utilize. Many workshop maps feature some of these elements, and I'd have to imagine Valve took that into account when thinking up these many fun scenarios. Except Swamp Fever, fuck that one. There's 2 more quasi-official campaigns, but there's not much to say. The Last Stand is an itty-bitty level slapped in front of the Left 4 Dead 1 Lighthouse survival map. Oh boy, a 2-chapter campaign, sweet. The first chapter has a very drawn-out crescendo event, turning on the generators and then waiting for the crane to do its thing, and yeah, it's not amazing. The finale is just the lighthouse survival level, but you have to get gas cans at one point, then you go to the boat near the shore for rescue after 2 tanks. Whatever. Coldstream is official now, but was actually a fan-created campaign that Valve thought was so good they made it part of the base game. I don't think it's irredeemably bad or anything, but when they pick one community map over the others to make official, it's going to be held to a higher standard, and I'd say it's okay, I guess. Chapter 2 is by far the most interesting. You exit a tunnel and get this crazy bright sun shining in your face, which is unique. The tank emerging later on, disrupting humongous boulders that instantly knock you down when they make contact, is quite something. And the crescendo event leading to the safe house is absolute madness. Endless zombies pouring in. Meanwhile, you have to fight against the current in some spots, and travel down this extremely cramped stairwell, seemingly custom built for spitter ambushes. It's insane. This was basically the only time I concluded that the ammo pile that was placed before this section was deserved, since this stretch is so long and arduous. Because it's so difficult, we ended up moving down to normal after a few attempts, which is something I'll talk about in more detail soon, so keep this in mind, but even still, it's a memorable moment for sure. There's a few other bright spots, but overall, this campaign feels fine. They reused the mudmen and armored zombies here. I don't like forest settings in the first place a lot of the time, so the first chapter feels kinda boring especially. and it's only 4 chapters, the last of which being an endless Crescendo event. I'm fine with it existing, but the fact that this was paid DLC for the Xbox version is ridiculous. Along with making a community map made official, this DLC allowed Xbox users to play any mutation they wanted, in addition to adding in the 4 campaigns from the first game, playable in Left 4 Dead 2. Jesus, imagine paying for this as a separate DLC. Once again, fuck off, Microsoft. Before moving on, there's something to note about the general gameplay of all the campaigns in Left 4 Dead 2, and that's how they modified the Crescendo events. The developers talked about wanting to curtail players just hiding in a corner during these onslaughts, which is why they added the gauntlets to the game, where you'll need to press a button or pull a lever, then run through the horde, fighting to stay alive, until you find the off switch or get where you need to go. I can understand the desire to encourage a playstyle that isn't turtling up and playing it safe, but because you'll have to get to a new location before the zombies stop swarming, it spikes the difficulty tremendously. I mentioned in the first video that I appreciated that these moments were made more challenging, since normal felt a bit harder. However, I didn't foresee the knock-on effect it would have, making higher difficulty selections that much less approachable. The gameplay of everything in between on Advanced feels great, I love and prefer it, but the moment these gauntlets begin, it's as if the game changed which setting we were on. Death after death after death, zombies pour in from all over, the horde will not stop coming until you do the thing. Even then it's not over. After you proved yourself and have gotten to the destination or turned off the noise, there's a persistent trickle of zombie groups that are, I guess, okay with being fashionably late. I've seen zombies spawn and ambush us from within the safe room itself. It's honestly really cool and hectic when you succeed, but the level of chaos is on an entirely different level, to the point where you may feel the need to turn it down a difficulty mid-campaign. I've had to do that in a few separate instances, and I'm happy the game lets you do it, but the problem is, there's not really a fear of dying when running around the level not in a panic event after you swallow your pride and lower the setting. This isn't a you're not good enough and or you're on the wrong difficulty setting problem, it's a there's no ideal difficulty issue, since the two sides of the game, Crescendo and non-Crescendo, feel wholly divorced from one another. The disparity in the gameplay is staggering. Even worse, since many of them are close to the ends of the chapter, meaning if you are trying to tough it out on a higher difficulty than you probably should, depending on who's with you and what mods you have on for the bots to behave properly.
Wait, you're still grabbed?
Yeah.
God damn it, where? Oh, they're so inept when it comes to smokers, dude.
Fucking, they can't handle smokers ever, I swear.
Does it hurt?
You'll have to play the level again, even though you were basically right at the finish line. I know this is a lot of bitching about something that'll always come down to preference and skill level, but it was hard not to notice a big shift whenever one of these would spring up. I'd have to imagine a lot of this came down to the melee weapons, or at least the idea of not camping in one spot for a Crescendo event. Like the Spitter, the gauntlets have to exist to keep the melee weapons less overpowered. As far as the believability of it all, I was originally going to raise a fuss about how silly it is that zombies endlessly pour in after every minor noise our survivors cause with the bottleneck Crescendo events. However, when taking a step back, most of them make enough sense, or are at least similar enough to the first games that it wouldn't make much sense to critique them. Sure, the waves of infected never stopping is sillier than them only coming for a brief time window, but before, the noise was something that stopped after a while, or was a discrete sound in the first place. Here, the noises keep on going, like the roller coaster ride or the merry-go-round, or, best of all, the security alarm in the mall, so the prolonged hordes of zombies coincides with the extended disturbance. It works well enough, not a huge deal. However, there's one exception, and it's what I alluded to earlier. Swamp Fever's gauntlets are incredibly dumb. Why would we even need to lower this fucking plank of wood? Is this a bit? It's so stupid it's supposed to be funny, or what? This squeaky lever is such a disruptive noise that it attracts hordes of infected for minutes on end? I didn't want to do this, since it's Left 4 Dead, who cares, but we've been trekking through knee-deep water, aimlessly wandering to the next place the whole campaign, and now, suddenly, this little walkway, this 5-foot slab of lumber is vital to keep on going? The same can be said for the airplane. Oh, sorry, can't walk around it for some reason, nor can you go through these gaps in the plane itself. No can do, buddy, my guy, my friend. This emergency door is the only way out of this swamp. As far as the characters in Left 4 Dead 2, I've already alluded to it, but I'm not a huge fan. I don't hate them, but I don't love them either. Ellis and his rambly stories are kind of funny, but move the needle of the tone towards the less serious side quite a bit. Coach's nostalgic love for old rock bands and his church-going ways, and whatever else he's known for, I don't know, calling witches bitches all the time.
Bitches must like sugar.
I've spent more time in Left 4 Dead 2 than I have with 1 at this point, and none of them have really won me over in that extended length of time. In fact, the moment I went back to play a campaign that featured the original group of survivors, I instantly became more comfortable. It was like returning home after a long day at work. I got to mentally relax and enjoy whenever these personalities decided to interact with one another. The only interactions I genuinely enjoyed with the new group were the start of Swamp Fever, where Nick defends his decision to shoot the zombie pilot.
Nick, what the hell? You shot the pilot.
Well, he wasn't doing a very good job once he became a zombie, was he?
True, he was a zombie, but he was also our only pilot.
I shot a zombie. He was a zombie, Ellis. He must have gotten bitten before he picked us up.
Nick, what the hell? You shot the pilot.
Well, he wasn't doing a very good job once he became a zombie, was he?
That's true. If I had to pick a low point in the flight, it was probably when he stopped flying the chopper and attacked us.
The time where Ellis started telling us a story about us by accident and didn't realize it until he was nearly done.
Keith and I were on the top of a burning building, and we had to fight our way down like 5 floors of zombie. Wait a second. I guess that was you guys.
And Nick and Rochelle talking about getting his suit dirty.
You ruined my white suit.
The white suit with zombie brains all over it? That one?
Brains come out. Swamp water doesn't. Don't ask me how I know that.
Besides that, I like when they talk amongst themselves about what Special Infected are called early on, them saying things like, huh, so that's a tank, and such. Rochelle's demeanor towards Ellis is kind of sweet. Nick's bloodthirsty screams when he's using the chainsaw are always hysterical. And that's kinda it. There's just not enough here to make them anything more than passable, and even worse, one character in particular actively went out of his way to cause me to dislike him. This is gonna break a lot of hearts, but it's Coach. If you pay attention, you'll notice it too. He says the same line with the same inflection so goddamn often, it makes me want to find a mod to completely remove that voice line from the game. Seriously, next time you play, I want you to listen in for when he says this, or this.
Look out! Look out! Look out!
All of the survivors this time around say look out or watch out far too often. But Coach's is the only one that consistently breaks through whatever noise is currently sounding off. His distinct voice cuts through everything else to reach your ears each and every time.
Oh shit! Watch out!
An entirely new game mode sprung from the gimmick of one of the campaign finales. Scavenge Mode is simply the goal of filling up the car with gas, but that's all you do, usually with generators instead. 2 teams of 4, and most like with Versus, one team plays as the zombies, one as the survivors, and they go back and forth. There's a lot of maps to pick from, and they seem to have a certain amount of gas cans placed in set areas. Because it's a best of series, usually 3, and all that matters is if you win the round versus racking up a bunch of points, the second team to play as the survivors in a round just has to collect 1 more gas can than the previous team did to get a win, and it's a best of something, usually 3, so the team who gets to 2 wins first wins the whole match. The tiebreaker being how fast you collected all of them works really well, and creates some extremely tense moments when looking at the results screen. This works both when you have 2 really good teams who've collected all of the gas cans in the map, and when you're both kinda shit and have happened to land at a specific number, like 10. Regardless if you're garbage or a literal Left 4 Dead god, it's a decent time, as long as people don't take it too seriously, but sadly this is a 14-year-old game, so the majority of the people in online lobbies are veterans, and thus most seem to take it very seriously. There's a surprising amount of nuance to this game mode, which makes it really interesting. Every gas can successfully poured into the generator extends your time to collect. When the timer runs out, or all survivors are incapacitated, the round is over. On smaller maps, the timer is almost never an issue, but on larger ones, yeah, that can play a role. When the clock hits 0, if a survivor is currently holding on to a gas can, you're in a grace period, like the final play of a football game, or the ball being in the air at the end of a basketball game. Sports, am I right? Except here, if the player manages to return the gas can successfully, more time gets added, 20 seconds I think, and you play on. So those moments where it comes down to a single player attempting to dump their gas can, holy crap, those are butt-clenching. White outlined gas cans are ones that haven't been touched by the survivors, but when they're outlined in orange, it means they have been picked up and are, essentially, in play. This matters if you're a spitter on the opposing team, since orange outlined gas cans you can destroy with your acid spit. It's not instantaneous, you'll see the can flashing for a second or two before it explodes into fire, so you do have a chance to make a quick save, which can be exhilarating when you nab it right before it's too late, But if you left all your gas cans in the same spot and one of them goes in flames, they likely all will, which is brutal. Destroyed gas cans will reset at their respective spawning points again, so if all of them go at once, that's a huge blow to the survivors. There's also the risk of shooting them yourself by accident, another tactic for zombie players to keep in their back pocket. Maybe charging in and getting them to fire at you, hoping they miss, will result in them screwing their team out of a gas can. All of these little, small but significant subtleties make this game mode feel wholly distinct, while also providing that same Left 4 Dead versus magic at the same time. When a match comes down to the wire, oh baby can those final moments of win or lose gameplay feel exciting and intense. In terms of strategy, it certainly seems that creating a human conveyor belt, where you simply toss them from person to person in a line, having one or two people finding and tossing, and the other one or two filling the generator up, is the way to go. The pro players are quite impressive with their E-button spamming and their throwing skills. They can juggle like 4 at a time, but I'm not sure if the meta behind Scavenge looks as interesting as just playing the game casually. I can easily see how this would have been a joy to play back when everyone was trying out the game for the first time, but the moment certain people with more time on their hands develop their skills, the lack of a skill-based matchmaking just invites the toxic behavior that's just not fun for me personally. It's especially unfortunate, since this seems like such a perfect drop-in, drop-out mode, one where there shouldn't be a ton of pressure. There's a lot less commitment opposed to playing a campaign on co-op or versus, so it's a shame some of the community are fickle about which maps are picked, or quit out if they have a teammate that even makes a small mistake. This brings me to No Mercy Rooftops. Talk about optimizing the fun out of a game, the hardcore fanbase of this mode seems to want one map and one map only, Rooftops. On one hand, it is very interesting. It's the only map that I'm aware of that has bottomless pits you can utilize as special infected. Using a jockey to pull them off, or a charger to barrel them off the ledge, on paper is awesome. However, the reason this map gets picked so much is, although it does contain a lot of gas cans, since the stage itself is so tiny, those cans are all extremely close to the generator. This does a few things. Not only can veteran players move efficiently and swiftly to show off their stuff, it also means that survivors are generally always pretty close to each other, so a special infected can't really do much without being in the vision of a different survivor. Your only bets are near the gas cans at the exterior of the map, but even still, beyond a fluke or something, the pro players will yeet those cans up and move on without issue. When you encounter enough veterans in one squad, the question won't be, can they get all of the cans, but how fast can they go? It's practically a foregone conclusion that all 21 cans will be retrieved. It's definitely the map the community have chosen as their skills showcase battlegrounds, but fucking hell, it's so boring and optimized, there's barely any stakes, and the special infected have almost no room to stretch their legs, besides those outer areas like I said. It's not fun, I'm sorry. I'm just happy I was able to inject some variety into the lobbies I was hosting, selecting stages that don't seem to get picked as much. I've even seen a Not No Mercy in chat before, so I can tell I'm not the only one who thinks this map gets played too often. If I had to guess though, in addition to No Mercy Rooftops, Port is likely another favorite for regular players, given that newbies will want to select it for the achievement of playing on it 5 times. Thankfully, it's good enough to earn its reuse. This is one of the better maps for Scavenge, in my opinion. It's big enough to separate a group, has enough houses and walls to block the survivor's vision, and there's even a high-up vantage point near the generator for the spitter to hang out. Because it's become the tried-and-true spitter nest, it does get a bit tired and predictable after enough time, but conceptually it's a really good addition. Having a bird's-eye view as a spitter is quite fitting, given that their initial visual concept design was being a bird lady, essentially, before turning into what they have now. They thought it was verging on too goofy, so they switched it, but we can still hear the shrieks and caws from the sound design. The height is also beneficial since you can splatter the generator spot with spit really easily, resulting in some damage and some gas cans being destroyed. That does lead me to one annoying idiosyncrasy of this game mode in relation to points, however. It doesn't matter a whole lot, the points on the zombie side of things aren't what wins you the round, but when defending yourself from being kicked, it's good to have a respectable score to show that you have been helping your team. That said, to me, the fact that destroying gas cans as a spitter doesn't net you any points on its own is really silly. That's literally one of the most beneficial things you can do when as a spitter, especially when the gas cans are close to the generator and they have to respawn far away. I was thinking even a flat 25 points per destroyed can could work, but perhaps you could do it by distance, so a ruined can further away from its own spawn point would earn more than one you destroyed near where the survivors grabbed it. I don't know, something to show the other players that yes, you're clearly helping the team. I also think it's interesting how coveted the spitter is in Scavenge, given they interact with the gas cans in a way the others don't. Everyone wants the opportunity to light up the opponent's dreams ablaze, but I'd have to imagine most people wouldn't like spawning as the boomer in this mode. It's the same as versus survival. The horde is coming all the time anyway, the players are in this set area regardless, so their biggest gimmick, luring zombies towards the survivors, is dampened quite a bit. At the very least, they do blind human players, which might help in a non-direct way, I guess, and when they explode, the orange outline gas cans nearby can be blown away or in the air. I suppose this tactic could work on rooftops, but I've already gone over why the special infected don't get much time or room to do much there, so it's a moot point. Port being such a balanced map raises another point about this game mode. Some maps are brand new for the idea, such as Death Toll, Dark Carnival, Swamp Fever, and so on, but others aren't. Both Port in the Passing and the Atrium and Dead Center are the same as they are in their respective campaigns, meaning the designers likely spent more effort here than in others, balancing and thinking about how to craft a satisfying gas can retrieval process for the survivors, and shape the environment to give the Versus mode special infected a way to slow the survivors down. Perhaps this is why Atrium feels as streamlined as rooftops at times. Everyone knows the best strategy, toss them all down and fill her up, but at least here, there's more room to work with as a zombie, given the vertical nature and loss of visuals on each survivor from the ground floor. The survival mode is back, and this time you can play it in a Versus mode setting. The Versus variation of it is actually really boring to me though. Playing as the special infected is normally a good time, so this was surprising until I pinpointed what the cause was. In the other game modes, sure, killing the survivors is the goal, but you're also trying to stop them from doing something else, be it collecting gas cans or simply traveling to the safe room. Because the objective for the survivors is to literally just stay alive in one confined map as long as possible, there's less room to catch a player by surprise or to plan ahead based on where you know the survivor has to eventually end up. You lump in with the horde, endlessly throwing yourselves at the other team, essentially just having a deathmatch of sorts, which just isn't that appealing to me. It also doesn't help that the rounds can be on the shorter side, sometimes ending abruptly and anticlimactically, usually because human players are obviously better than the AI in most cases. This means you might only get 2 or 3 spawns as a special infected. The pacing just feels really off for me. I'll stick to the other game modes. Speaking of that, I spent a lot more time playing the non-versus survival this time around with Discord peoples, and I have to admit, it can be an absolute blast when you have a group. The fact that there's this many levels to pick from is pretty crazy, and some really stand out, like Death Toll's Sewers and Church, Crash Course's Truck Depot, and The Passing's Wedding Venue. The chaos and intensity ramping up as fast as it does makes each round fly by, and in the best way possible. There's no wasted time here. There aren't a few pathetic and worthless rounds thrown in at the start to pad out the player's time. 10 minutes is exceedingly well done, and you might be struggling just to get to 4. Surprisingly, this approach of bite-sized mayhem adds to its charm, since you could easily find yourself retrying the same fun map over and over again, not realizing that an hour had already gone by. Whoops. The many mutations available in the base game, which modify the experience in some way, are fun for what they are, but I can't say I was drawn to many of them. I liked the survival mutation Nightmare that adds a fog effect among some beefier enemies. I downloaded the Steam Workshop fog effect to test out, since I liked the Nightmare mutation so much, but the one I tried was too strict, and the linearity of the campaign makes it a bit worse. It being active in a survival setting works really well. Special Delivery is nuts. There's 0 common infected, and specials spawn all the freaking time. Like many things here, maybe this is fun with friends for a round or 2, and some groups could get really into it and make it their gimmick challenge run, but it certainly isn't appealing to me, to say the least. The one I liked the most, out of all of them that I tried, was Last Man on Earth, a solo-centric mutation where there aren't any common infected, like Special Delivery, but unlike there, they spawn far less frequently. Getting grabbed means you essentially lose a life. You don't get downed, since nobody could pick you up, of course, and instead of dying, you fall to a low health, and the next grab will kill you. This means you have to use a medkit before another special infected manages to pin you down, otherwise you're actually for realsies dead. The novelty of this one was worth at least a playthrough. I dug the vibes of it a lot. It was eerie seeing this setting so devoid of, well, anything, living or undead. Very cool. I've already touched on realism mode a bit, but it essentially strips the game of any non-diegetic visuals, removes rescue closets, and makes the witches more punishing when on normal difficulty or higher. Getting hit by a witch is instant death instead of getting downed, and is why I mentioned that defibrillators can be especially useful here, plus the fact that rescue closets aren't a thing, they need to be revived or you'll have to make it to the safe room without them. The main reason realism mode is much more difficult comes down to the lack of outlines around the characters. Not being able to see where your allies are when behind walls is way more significant than you might think at first blush. You basically have to stay within eyesight and announce to your party anytime you're entering a different room or climbing a ladder. When a special infected has a teammate pinned down, well, let's hope you can find them. You don't have any cues to go on. It's crazy. I bet a lot of people had a blast with this, either playing it seriously or just for shits and giggles. As far as the community campaigns go, there are a lot of them, like a crap load. Seriously, way too many to even begin scratching at the surface of covering a large percentage of them. Much like last time, I'll cover 3 in this video as a nice wrap-up on Left 4 Dead 2. Before that, though, I want to give a blanket approval to all of the slightly altered original campaigns, the ones where it's a new take on a classic Valve map. Holy hell, I loved these. No Mercy Rehab, especially. Like, No Mercy is one of the best campaigns from the first game by far, and it was such a joy to walk around this reimagining of it, trying to figure out the environment again. It gave me the sensation that I was playing a remake, kinda like the Resident Evils, or at the very least, like a second scenario or something. Just, man, I thought these would be some of my least favorite, but they ended up being almost the opposite. There were times where I was thinking, wow, this is so awesome yet so simple, maybe a Left 4 Dead 3 AI director could have given us something like this, if we assume Valve were to keep iterating on the dynamic map idea anyway. Okay, now for the real stuff. The community campaigns I'll be reviewing today are Devil Mountain, Urban Flight, and Daybreak. Devil Mountain is, from top to bottom, a solid campaign. I can't say it's my favorite out of the ones I've played, but almost nothing about it is bad either. The chapters all feel distinct, and the settings make you feel like you're really on a journey to get somewhere. You start in a suburban neighborhood, move through a construction area, climb up the side of a mountain, go through caves, and have a finale at the summit. The street level has a nice start. A car comes down and crashes into an alarmed car, summoning the horde immediately. There's a turret here to deal with it, I guess, but it does feel pretty out of place, and if you have AI, they're going to stand right in front of you. The lighting in the house and all around it, including the pool, is visually appealing, and the white functional lights shining on the hills and the construction company behind it are a nice contrast. There's a lot of extra areas to explore all around, be it the backyard and treehouse in Chapter 1, or the many sheds and buildings in Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is where things start to get really interesting, as storms start triggering when you're making your way up the mountain. The heavy rain does a good job of hiding threats on this narrow play space, including witches if you're lucky. The cave section is my favorite part of the campaign. It feels completely original, and plays and looks fantastic. The string lights, the shiny and kind of damp-looking floors and walls, and the trails on the ground to help with navigation. During the panic event, the zombies will filter in through the tunnels, and even drop from above in the opening up top. Oh, it's just great, what a good time. The finale area feels just big enough to roam around and use multiple vantage points. There's a turret in 2 spots, on the roof and on the ground, and the map overall looks lovely. A helicopter at the end will take you away, and yeah, a pretty good campaign. Urban Flight has a lot going for it, so this will be a longer one. You start with dual pistols and don't find tier 1 guns for quite a while, which is awesome. The visuals of the outdoor areas are genuinely stunning, with the orange glow and ash falling all around you, and you can even spot the faraway buildings on fire. The Gnome Depot, as it's called on the truck outside, as well as the bookstores and many other side buildings, make this city area come alive. Although the simple fence blocking the path is a bit uninspired, and there are definitely gaps that could fit your body, I like having to go through a building, up a few floors, across to a different building, and down some stairs. This creator knew when to add some verticality to spice things up. There's also this ludicrous fence slide a bit earlier, which seems like far too big of a drop without breaking our legs, but it's funny, so it's worth it. These chapters are a bit on the longer side, but refreshingly, they didn't feel fatiguing. It was a nice challenge, and even better, the second chapter plays on this in a genius way. You get to a safe room door, and when you open it, you see a destroyed safe room. I've played this campaign twice, once where we walked right in, and the other time a tank literally busted down the safe room door in front of us. Incredible, what a moment. Another excellent set piece comes a bit later. We get to the roof and have to blow up this tower, which causes a horde of zombies to rush in. A very nice crescendo event overall, and afterwards you cross over this narrow ladder to the other side. Then you walk down some flimsy-looking wooden stairs, until out of nowhere it breaks and you fall all the way down. Here is where my 2 playthroughs split in a very fun way. The first time through, I had no idea what was up ahead. We just heard a witch, and we made sure to be careful. I could see her in the room to the right, so I suggested we run past.
Okay, on 3 we're gonna run. Go, 3.
Oh, okay.
What are we here to?
That's right, all these rooms have witches in them, except one, I think.
Help me! Help me!
What I thought was a safe space to hide out in, post-witch, ran me right into another witch. Even funnier, the hero closet to rescue Rochelle was placed inside the other witch room. This time the witch got stuck, thankfully, but just my luck, I ended up barging into yet another witch's room across the hall. Man, what a devious area. The visuals for it already match the red color palette of the witch designs well, and the idea of a clump of them in one spot is just fantastic. In my other playthrough, we didn't piss any witches off, but when we fell down the stairs, a spitter was in the exact worst placement and got us when we fell in that tiny area. Good lord. The hotel-turned-makeshift hospital is a surprisingly thorough touch when it comes to the world building for this campaign. We're still in Chapter 2, by the way, so the relief of finally getting to the safe room at the end of it was immense, a very well put-together level. Chapter 3 has a great crescendo event near the end, where you'll need to lower the bridge back down, since earlier a car drove through and raised it behind them, interestingly enough. After the bridge is finally down and the gate goes up, you have to run across to turn off the noise. This isn't on par with the end of the Parish campaign or anything, but this bridge section is pretty intense. You may or may not have to leave someone for dead. Wait. The finale has you getting gas cans to fill up the generator to power the hangar, which allows the door to be opened so we can board the plane that guy who drove over here is trying to pilot. Nothing spectacular, but it's a good finish. This is definitely one of the better campaigns I've played out of all of the community maps across both games.
Help me! Help me!
That said, though, Daybreak fucking blew me away. The quality of this campaign is unbelievable. If there was ever another community map to add to the base game of Left 4 Dead 2, my vote is on this one 1000%. I don't even know how they pulled some of this stuff off, to be honest. It takes place in San Francisco, and they incorporate the Golden Gate Bridge and Alcatraz in phenomenal ways. First off, even before that, the opening chapters already have a few branching paths and side areas, like deciding which way to get out of the sewer, or stopping through a couple completely optional entire buildings. The bridge itself is one of the most impressive things I've seen by any creator. In other campaigns, there have been instances where you slide down a slope, and it's fine. It feels like a return point, as the developers call it, where you have a good vantage point from above, but when you inevitably continue, you can't go back. You're there now. The way Daybreak did theirs, though? Amazing. The bridge collapsed in this area, and you're meant to carefully make your way down, but there are gaps now and then, but you'll need someone to come help you if you fall in. This trek down this one slope was the only one out of any I've seen that actually felt daunting, like you had to seriously watch your step and carefully manage the steepness of the incline. Looking back, when you make it to the cruise ship, seeing the zombies pouring down it was something else. The visuals of this entire campaign were on another level. Beautiful vista after gorgeous view after great attention to detail touches. The pool area with all of the bodies strewn about, the shuffleboard section in the beginning that serves no purpose at all, it's just there after the Crescendo event, the first chapter's beach and water with the bridge high above, just impeccable. This campaign also featured a fake safe room of sorts, but not quite as bamboozly as the Urban Flight one. The final chapter, where you're in Alcatraz, was out of this world. This finale is the coolest one I've ever played, hands down. It's the classic scavenge goal. Many gas cans are found within the cells, which you have to open yourself with a lever. Many cells contain zombies ready to pounce at you, like boomers, hunters, and chargers, or a few of them might house items. The level of verticality in this environment is insane. It's easy to get lost and turned around, and what's more, fucking witches can spawn in here, making it even more tense and chaotic. The amount of voice lines found in this campaign that fit right in astounded me. Like, did they dig these up from somewhere, or what? I don't remember them ever talking about a prison before, but there were voice lines for it.
Man, I don't even think Keith's been treated this bad.
Earlier on the bridge, there was a CETA vehicle, one that starts a Crescendo event, and Coach acknowledged that he'd seen this before.
Oh, damn, another one of these things?
This has to be referencing the one found in the Parish, right? Which means, hell, Valve could co-sign this campaign as being completely canon if they wanted. I can't believe how good this one was. There were so many unique assets not found in the base game, the setting was used to perfection, especially the bridge, which is looming over a lot of the earlier chapters and is still visible when on the cruise ship. Goddamn, hats off, just perfection. All that being said, there were a lot of great campaigns I didn't include here, though. This game is very much alive and well if you want it to be, partly due to the near-endless amount of content streaming out of the Steam Workshop. When thinking about an angle for this video, or a phrase for the thumbnail at the very least, initially I was going to go with Left 4 Dead 2 is timeless, and even though I strayed away from that idea since it seemed too generic and circle-jerky, It really is true. This game remains absolutely stellar to this day. The core gameplay, the integrated co-op and multiplayer, the supposed director changing things up, the special infected, hell, even the music. The song that plays at the end of a chapter, and the one that plays once a campaign is almost done and into the credits, those are way catchier than they have any right to be, and are bangers even 14 years on. This game isn't perfect in my eyes, but it stands the test of time in the ways that matter. I've had the pleasure of introducing a few of my online friends to Left 4 Dead 2 when making this video, and even though they're younger, and thus have grown accustomed to other shooters and the more modern ways of designing games, they all said the same thing. Holy shit, this game is fun as fuck when you play it with friends. That might sound natural, almost expected, right? What game isn't better with friends? Well, to me, almost all of them. It seems I'm in the minority where I actually prefer to play games alone, not just multiplayer with randoms, but even with my friends and family. Don't get me wrong, I can still have fun and enjoy the social aspect of it all, and depending on the game, I can definitely have a blast while playing. I am the EDF guy after all. But for me, the idea that friends always make a game more fun just isn't true. Breath of the Wild, Majora's Mask, Resident Evil, Darkwood, Metroid Prime, Death Stranding, and so many more. None of them would be more enjoyable for me with a friend, and that's why I think it's significant that I agree with the people I've introduced Left 4 Dead to. The game is good, but when playing with friends, it's fucking amazing. The reason is simple. This, more than almost any other game I've played, was designed around the co-op experience. From top to bottom, the game mechanics, items, levels, enemies, and on foster teamwork. They encourage playing as a unit, sticking together as a group. Add on the many other pieces of the puzzle that make the games great, such as the structure of the campaigns to be mini-stories all their own, while being semi-connected to the overall travels of these survivors, the gimmicks and settings making each one distinct, the AI director behind the scenes altering each playthrough, even if only a little, such as the spawn points of items and the placements of witches and tanks, and the delightful and consistent horror film window dressing, which extends from the sound design to the load screen posters and credits at the end. This is simply a perfect series of games, even if one of them isn't perfect on its own, and it being someone like me saying that, knowing my clear preference in slower-paced, exploration-heavy single-player games, that has to mean something. I was hesitant at the end of the first video when saying this, but I think I've cemented it in my head as time went on. Left 4 Dead is a masterpiece, and it coming from me makes that take all the more significant. To that same effect, Left 4 Dead 2 might not be flawless, the variety and frequency of the item placements can sometimes hurt the experience, but there's no denying it. Left 4 Dead 2 is the ultimate everlasting dragon of a video game. I don't think it'll ever go out of style, it's just as fun and worth playing today as it was 14 years ago, and I suspect in another 14 years, the sentiment will remain. Hey, retro video game reviewer of 2037 or so. Good, right? Yeah, the game is good. Thanks for watching. I didn't, script out a outro. Please subscribe to the channel, please. If you want to give me money on Patreon, that's great too, but really, it'd be really helpful for you to if you just like subscribe to the channel, you know, and like the video. That'd be really good, actually. Yeah, so probably more Left 4 Dead content soon. It'll make sense. If you see a longer video out that has both these videos combined, maybe watch it. Perhaps there's some differences in there, you know? Who knows? Alright, see ya.
Oh, there she is.
What? Oh, fuck.
You did it.
Nope, I'm out of here.
Why did you get me?
Because she couldn't reach me.
Do you want more validation? You want me to laugh at it again?
You know what, Craig? I'm gonna lash out.
Oh. Well, I'm terrified. Did you shoot the fucking car? Okay, well, yes. The safe room is literally right here, so I'm gonna die anyway? Are you I'm gonna die.
I got you! Pipe bomb!
Oh, the pipe bomb is actually... Yeah, no, I'm gonna die to the pipe bomb now.
Oh, sorry.
I got spit on! Are you fucking serious? Oh my god.
Oh my god, I'm on fire!
Dork, this is
that
your
was me.
fault!
Yeah, the fire was...
Yeah,
the fire was me actually. Yeah. Sorry about that.
You fucking annihilated us. I guess you were right. You lashed out. Oh, I'm up again. Okay, well I'm gonna get.
Why did I die?
I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Nate. I am so sorry.
I am. Yeah, this is actually unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, let's just leave him there. I
I'm
think.
gonna lash out, he says. I'm gonna lash out.
Stop it!
You
My stomach
killed
hurts.
an innocent person. You actual psychopath.
Oh my god.
Don't make me come
Really?
out there for you. Reload. Birthday kid here. Quit screwing around.
What are you
Get
doing?
inside.
Get inside!
You keep closing it.
What are you talking about?
I kept trying to go in and the door was closed.
Get in here, guys.
Damn, Rochelle, nice. We're gonna
You
make
weren't
it.
closing the door?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Y'all,
Fuck
inside
off.
now.
Do you like that that's a mechanic? Like you can. Hey.
Drew, come on.
I'm just gonna go back up. I'm gonna go back
Drew,
up
come
the
on.
ladder here.
Open the door.
Oh shit, there's a fucking boomer out here, dude. Let me in. Holy fuck. You dickhead.
Oh shit. Dude, look at
so
that.
smart.
And watch, all the bodies are gonna flow. Ready? Physics.
Absolutely humongous brain. It was also exactly how it's meant to be used.
What?
Well, it was. It was just, you know.
Wait,
I'm impressed.
Hang
Very
on,
well
hang
done.
on, hang on. Are you saying that you're supposed to use pipe bombs when there's a big group of zombies?
I'm gonna be honest, I vibe checked them, and that is the
Oh
vibe
my
check.
god! There's a charger right behind us! Over here, Renji. Here comes the real important part, alright? The real important part.
Yeah, Renji.
Oh,
We have
fallback
all,
explosives.
no, we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
all of our explosives over here. Don't shoot
Yeah, I
in this
heard.
direction. Shoot
Yeah, I
in
heard.
this direction. I'm just saying, do not shoot towards this area.
Okay, we're good.
They're in the church.
Oh,
They're behind
for the
us.
Someone,
Oh shoot!
someone
Oh,
shot.
no.
Who shot?
I
didn't.
Me.
It was one. We were all over there, and I know I didn't shoot.
I know I didn't shoot.
I'm recording this, so I'm gonna investigate.
You should.
You should. We're good.
They're in the church.
Oh,
They're
We're good.
Any
We
publicity
have all
in a
the Molotovs
YouTuber's
still.
video is good publicity.
Yeah, no,
We're in a
I'm-
comedy club. You have to go with
I
it.
refuse to play along. I fucking hate jokes, alright? Don't ever joke with me. I will piss my pants right here.
Dude, that would be that'd be
cool.
make it funnier. I think
Hey, if
I'd
it-
have to compliment the commitment.
If I do that, could you put that in the video?
Well, you have to have like a video of yourself doing it, but yeah.
Wait, what if I just told you I did it?
No, that doesn't count.
I did it. I just did it. Put it in. Put this in.
Okay, if you give me 10...
Dorkaxe is, I just pissed myself.
That's great.
Hey everyone,